Okay.
Welcome, Wargamers. This is Doug with 2+ Stuff, and today we are diving into the Age of Sigmar lore behind the Glottkin, one of the coolest models and nastiest things to ever arrive in the mortal realms. This video is requested by multiple guys here. If you have a question, I'd love to answer it. Go ahead, click subscribe, leave it in the comments down below. I always give credit when I can, and I use almost all your videos for inspiration for future stuff. So really, what are the Glottkin? First of all, it's a term to describe three people. It's actually three brothers, Otto, Guric, and Ethrak Glott. Glott being the last name, and together they are the Glottkin. So you can talk about it singular, referring to all three of them. And functionally, they are collectively a warband leader for Nurgle. Now, their story is actually really cool and somewhat tragic, and so we're going to dig into that today. See, back in the old world, the Empire of Mankind was fighting a bunch of Nordic tribals. Now, these tribals were kind of the warriors of chaos type thing. They kind of had worshipping the old gods and kind of wanted to live as individual tribes rather than join the race of men as a whole. And they did little raid attacks against Empire cities and things like that. Well, one time they did a attack against a small village where a man named Olius Glott and Ethra Greenblood lived, and they basically destroyed everything except for these two people who were able to escape with their lives. Now, Olius and Ethra stowed away on an Empire ship, basically as refugees. They have no home now, and they found an Empire ship who was friendly. The captain said, "You can stay on board if you want." And they basically stowed away. The thing is, the Empire ship was going to war rather than back to somewhere safe. And so they got to see firsthand with their own eyes how the Empire deals with these tribals. And it was horrific. Absolutely, they were outgunned, outmatched. Empire just laid down suppressive fire. The tribals did not stand a chance. They were bringing knives to a gunfight. Now, even though these tribal villages had just destroyed everything that they had, they were somewhat moved by pity by the inhumanity of the Empire and said, okay, here's the deal. This needs to end, obviously. Why don't we try something else besides more blood? And so basically their tactic was, here's the deal. We're going to sneak away from the Empire at night, and we're going to join these tribals. We're going to try changing them with enlightenment and education rather than just keep killing each other in this never-ending cycle. Olius taught them how to farm. Ethra was a magician of sorts, a wizard who knew life magics and could teach them how to heal each other and all these kinds of things. And with these gifts that they brought to the tribals, they were really adopted into their culture. Ethra became pregnant. Turns out she had triplets, and it was a huge blessing. Olius was super proud to be the dad. While Ethra was pregnant, a woman who was jealous because she couldn't have children came up and basically cursed her and tried to cut at her with a rusted knife. She didn't really kill her, she just kind of nicked her. But unfortunately, the knife was so rusted that an infection took over. Now, here's the thing. In her desperation to keep her babies alive, who were almost come to term, Ethra made a very dark prayer out to save her and her children from the death. And who else heard this prayer but Papa Nurgle? And he sent a little bloatfly over, and the bloatfly stung her, and instead of the infection getting worse, like you would think from something stinging you, it actually immediately healed her, the fever left her, and the infection was gone. Incredibly soon after that, the triplets were born. They were actually full term, so this whole thing happened pretty near the end of pregnancy. And on each of the babies, there was a small mark of Nurgle, the 3 circles. Now, Olius was so overjoyed that his wife and children were safe, he didn't even care. And really, he had no reason to. They had a very normal childhood. They gained a lot of goodwill and reputation within the village. They were strong boys. Otto and Guric were very strong and were great men to have around in the village, very helpful. Ethrak was extremely intelligent. He started learning the life magics that his mom knew and took to that very quickly. They were just a great family that just integrated so well into the tribal culture that they had grown up in. Now, we're assuming that some years went by. Boys probably grew until their mid to late teens, I would imagine. And all this time, the Empire never stopped trying to rid this area of tribals. And so one night, the Empire attacks. And it was a massacre, straight up massacre. Of course, Empire guys don't know that, one family here is from their people and not the tribals. You can't tell that from a distance, so they just start slaughtering wholesale everybody. Of course, the Glott boys, the 3 of them go out there to defend their village because why wouldn't you? You know, they've been raised in this culture. These people are the only people they've ever known. And someone's hurting their family. So they go out to defend. And they're doing great. They're doing their best. They're staying alive until they see an Empire guy slay their mother and father. And then we find out that little birthmark, what it really is it's a promise. A promise that when things go bad, Nurgle takes over. And these boys, after having just seen their parents murdered by an Empire that is doing some pretty nefarious things, they absolutely lose it. And things go from bad to super bad. Otto goes and grabs his father's farming sickle and just starts basically hacking Empire people like in a straight line, like a warm knife through butter. Ethrak, his life powers, which were used more defensively, all of a sudden just burst forth, and he starts slaying people left and right with magic spells. And Guric, who he doesn't really have a particular skill set, he just gains immense amounts of strength. There's actually a part of the story where he picks up an Empire like Gatling cannon and starts using it as a club. Now remember, they haven't transformed or anything yet. These are just teen boys who are just like laying absolute waste, like gods of war, slaying an entire Empire fleet that just beached on the shore. And so with that, these three guys turn the tide of the entire fight. It goes from being a wholesale slaughter of tribals to an absolute decimation of Empire troops. And with that moment of absolute travesty, the Glottkin are born. Because now all they have is each other. At this point, because the Empire had done so much damage to their home, they don't have a home, they don't have a people. And that seed of chaos that was in them has fully bloomed, and the despair and the anger and the hate has taken full root, and they just kind of start venturing off together on adventures, just doing whatever the spirit wills, right? Whatever they're compelled to do, which that compulsion comes from Nurgle. Otto, who is the, if you're looking at the model, is the guy all the way on top holding the sickle, his dad's sickle, becomes a very respected Lord of Nurgle, right? He is very battle-focused. He's very, very angry about what happened, particularly to his dad. That's why he still bears the sickle, or the scythe, I should say. Ethrak continues to bloom as a extremely powerful wizard. His powers are only augmented by discovering chaos and spells of Nurgle, and now he's able to create things in whatever image he wants that are just as miserable as he is. The censer that he has with him at all times actually carries the ashes of his parents. Their loss just weighs so heavily on these boys. And Guric, who is probably the most predominant of the brothers, basically solves his depression by eating a lot. Eating a lot. And so he grows and morphs in nastiness. He gets to be the massive thing that we see. When you look at the Glottkin model, the two brothers Otto and Ethrak are actually riding on the third, Guric. He's become so malformed that he can barely speak. He just kind of grunts. He's used literally as transportation for his brothers, and he is all but unkillable in combat. And with this, the Glottkin become the favorite of Nurgle, and he often sends them to lead warbands and attack other ones and knock down Empire defenses, whatever they want. Now, that was the old world lore, which there's no reason to think that it's not still canon. But in AOS, there hasn't been nearly as much about them. They've appeared a little bit in stories, and certainly been referenced to, but I don't feel like they've been a major driving force. I know that there are stories where they're in there, especially in the realm of life, but I don't feel like they've had their time to shine. And I really do hope that they get their time in the spotlight whenever the Nurgle equivalent of Blades of Corn or Disciples of Zinj comes out, the one that embodies the Nurgle demons and mortal units. I think that'll really be a great campaign and time to play. So I'm not going to spend too much time bringing them forward, but that is a really awesome backstory. What I want to focus on here is why they are awesome. First of all, the model, okay? I know I don't go into models too much during these lore videos, but they have done an incredible job of representing the storyline in these dudes. They look pained, right? Especially Guric, the big one that they're riding on. He looks miserable. They look like they are filled with the despair that typifies Nurgle and his forces and his magic and their armies. They're unique because we don't see very many relatives. There's no familial relations in bad guys a lot. A lot of times it's, I killed my family to prove my worth to Khorne and those kinds of things. But, they have a strong bond to one another. They're brothers, and they're literally the only part of their families that they have left. It's a very interesting family dynamic that we don't have literally anywhere else in the realms. What's interesting is that each one of them is described as being a powerful Chaos Lord in their own right. Maybe not Guruk so much because he can't vocalize those things, he can barely speak. But he is certainly a doomsday weapon for any warband if he was by himself. Otto Glott is the guy with the scythe on top. He can certainly lead a Chaos warband, and obviously Ethric would make a powerful Chaos wizard. You know what I mean? So like, each one of them individually is amazing. When you put them all together, you get like this incredible towering behemoth that can do all kinds of crazy things in combat. I think another thing that makes them stand out so much is that the best villains in any story are the ones that could have been different, right? Archaon could, it's kind of hard. He's not a good guy, right, at the heart of him. We don't have a tragic tale necessarily. He has a bad backstory. We went into that a little bit. But with these guys specifically, they were outdone by events out of their control. They had no control over the woman who infected their pregnant mother, no control over her prayer, no control over the Empire who came and struck and kind of planted that seed of chaos and let it bloom so that they became who they are. You know what I mean? They have suffered such immense loss, and none of it was through their own doing, but those things have made them who they are and are actively, they've set them on this course, and now they are taking it to the next level. I love the fact that they point out that the Otto Glott carries the scythe of his dad, and the Ethric has the ashes of his parents in his little scepter. That they're not just, they didn't just have a bad past and then become something, like Batman lost his parents, and then since that day he became Batman, we're trying to fight crime and stuff like that. Where like the past is behind them, but they're still emotionally dealing with it, but they carry literally remnants of their parents. I mean, his dad's tool, their mom's and dad's ashes, like, it's next level grief that still actively impacts them and makes events happen. And really all those things culminate to the real reason why I think the Glottkin are an incredibly interesting character in Age of Sigmar, and that is they are complex. That they have legitimate reasons for why they do what they do, and they were put on that course by things outside of their control, which makes you feel empathy towards them, and then you see the things that they do and you're like, oh no, you're a monster, right? You are a bad set of dudes. But that kind of twist of, I want to empathize with you, that is an incredibly powerful loss to have. You lost your home, you lost your parents, you lost everyone who's ever raised you in this Empire strike. You have no reason not to just despise mankind for what they've done. And yes, I understand, you found a home and a purpose and a belonging, but your belonging comes from this super malevolent deity. So it's just, you know what I mean? Like, it's so deep that it makes you just really appreciate them as characters. I can understand why they do what they do, but also conversely, I understand why literally any Order army wants them dead so bad. I understand why Nurgle looks on them with love, right? Graciousness, and why he chose them and why they're so unique amongst all his champions. I also understand why Alariel is so offended by everything they represent, everything they bring. You know what I mean? So when you can see both sides of the equation as far as any given character, why they do bad things and good things, and sympathize for both, that is a good character. That is a character that you want to follow in the stories. And I really hope that when they bring these guys forward more in the Age of Sigmar and really flesh out where they are now, that they are really given the spotlight that they deserve. And folks, that is my take on the Glottkin. I love this thing. It's a great model. I painted it. It's one of my favorite models I ever painted for one of the coolest armies in AOS. And if you have a lore question you would like answered, whether it's about Age of Sigmar or 40k, I don't care, go ahead and click subscribe. Leave it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear back from you. I read every single comment. I try to respond to as many as possible. Of course, there's a ton of you and only one of me. But I do use all your comments for inspiration for future videos. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you spent some time with me today. Thank you so much for that, and happy wargaming.